talk about our bare bones budget. And again, I think this was a great segue because part of this budget concept is trying to help get more kids here. As we did the budget presentations last year, Dr. Vera and I, almost every school district we went to had the common denominator of how can we get kids off waiting lists. And I think one of these options we have here is certainly the fire program we talked about, and then an additional program in the transportation cluster. So I guess what we need from the JLC is, we talked about, I mean, and for benefit of Mr. Lyons as well. Right now, we spend about $12 million. So if we do bare bones, just again, the salary increases, the healthcare, things like that, and some slight inflation. We did put 2 vans in there and $113,000 in budgetary reserve for year 1 of Casey's long-term financial or facility plan. I apologize. That brings us to $12.3 million. But then we talked in November that we would like at $2,000 per student to start this fire program, which I think all levels endorse between superintendents, assistants, principals, etc. That would take us up to $12.5 million for next year's budget. The other good news part about the budgeting is that, as we talked about the articles, we didn't get to this section yet, but there's a section there that says the excess of the prior year must be used to balance the budget for the upcoming year. So this budget does not include any more money coming from the schools. So we would use the excess as the articles dictate. So we wouldn't need any more money. Right now, everyone pays about $9.4 million from the 3 schools. So it's all we would ask again, $9.4 million. So it'd be nothing additional coming from the schools. So,
but there wouldn't be any money going back to the schools.
Well, we have to cover that too. So we have to decide what you recommend us, because again, these articles say that JLC really doesn't approve the budget, it can recommend it for the full boards. So 27 people. So, but I think we talked about this earlier in the articles meetings, that we want the JLC, I think all schools want to hear, the JLC recommends this budget for approval.
Yes.
We all were in consensus to say that. So that being said, yeah, so we can decide, are we going to spend 12.3 million or 12.5 with the fire program, or we also wanted to, again, in the spirit of extra students here, the transportation cluster, bring more students off that waiting list, but that brings us to 12.6 million.
So, Dr. Herrera or Cohen, do we have demand in the transportation cluster? We'll start with that one first, I guess. The Kubota program, which would take some diesel and some small engine students?
Yes, historically, we put in those extra monies to either build programs for next year, which if you remember a couple years ago, when we increased the healthcare and we also increased the culinary, we did it at bare bones budget.
Yes.
So we wanted, just because the enrollment cycle, because remember what happened years ago, we don't really end the enrollment cycle until February 15th. By the time we select kids, it's March and April. And then we were in trouble because we had hundreds of kids on the waiting list, a lot of angry parents wanting the kids to come here. And that was my first year as the director. I was acting executive director, and I said, we'll find a way. We'll take X amount, right, Mr. Hallowell?
You learned from that, though. You don't say that anymore, do you?
We'll find a way, and we doubled the healthcare and those areas. So I think we put a little cushion in there. If the JOC wants to expand, we do know between auto tech, historically, we talked with the assistant superintendents already on it, and they fully endorse that, right, Mr.
Oh, okay,
Dr.
so
Ron?
this isn't Kubota that you're talking about. This is.
We want to be our whole purpose is high intent, laser, very detailed. So we put this money in the budget knowing that we're having record numbers of attendance and enrollment, and historically, those areas in the past would necessitate, if we could find a way to get a
Second instructor.
transportation cluster. And
Yes.
there's a lot of different options, but we want to not move forward until we have the full support of the JOC. We also work with the labor, economic, workforce development, so we're going to be very strategic, and we just want the direction from the JOC saying, yes, here's monies,
Yep,
like a
yep.
couple years ago, that if things come together like they did, that you have the ability to move forward. But we won't know that until we get direction from the JOC and the 27 board members.
Yes.
Yeah, I believe the automotive cluster has always been a very popular one here too, and if we can move to get students off the wait list in that program, I think that's only gonna be a positive, so, and you're talking about $100,000 to ask for? And you're not even asking for any more money, the ask is still gonna be the same going to
Well,
the sending
no,
districts.
It would be more money then.
No,
Well, it's, fire is 150,000, which I think we decided.
yeah,
The next, for this, concept of the transportation cluster, is we ballparked 150 as well, because the cost of an instructor and all the healthcare benefits and
Mhm.
easers,
yeah.
roughly 150,000.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're essentially talking about another teacher, but he was saying they wouldn't be asking, you know, for any more money, that would still be covered under utilizing our excesses from,
Okay, well, that's
The
a
prior
good
year.
question.
Yes, it should, you have 800,000 to play with. And again, what we don't use is gonna go back to the districts, I guess, but the second segue to this, before we send money back, I would strongly urge, we hear Casey and his long-term facility plan, because I think there's gonna be dollars we're gonna need in the near future for the building. So before we just send money back and can't get it back, or it's gonna be harder to get back, we think of that long-term facility plan before we make that decision.
but as far as expanding without having to build new wings on, if we have the space to bring a second instructor in to ease some of those waivers, I don't see any issues. I mean, it seems successful in law
Well, there's the-
enforcement.
There's some limitations to the actual physical space,
Well, and that's what, you know,
and we're not up against that at this point. So additional instructors are possible.
so I would give that one, I'm not on finance, am I? Who's on finance committee?
This is the facilities committee.
Myself and Mr. Lyons.
Oh, there you go. So,
Not on finance.
you got Mr. Ott, it's just Ott.
Yes, Jim Ott.
I'm used to that.
So, yeah, I guess you
No, but
guys
you
make
are
the
facilities.
recommendation to send to the JOC.
I think you're the chair, too.
And that's an additional instructor in auto. Cut down on some of that waiting list.
As we don't have anything prepared to see, I was just trying to pay attention to what you were saying. What's,
Hey,
what's the,
Dan.
what's the difference
How many
between,
did you have drop
what do you get
on the
with
auto?
the low mark, what do you get with?
Specifically, I
What are the
can look at that. I don't have that
Bare
specific
bones
number
is
for that
12.3.
program.
Yeah,
I know that-
Basically just
Yeah.
keep status quo,
Before
status
we-
quo.
got it.
Make any
Okay.
decisions.
We
Let's
just put
look
two
at the
bends in there.
drop rate of the
We talked about
different,
that last.
That's still status quo.
Yes.
that are always full.
So that's
you know, like
12.3.
The high numbers.
Absolutely.
had-
I know we were
we had the
at
fire.
85 total
It's 12.3.
that had withdrawals
We had the
since
fire.
the beginning of the year.
That brings us up
But
to
I can look at
12.3.
program specific and get that laid out.
And that,
In
that's
the
the
next
fire
meeting,
program
the
we
next
worked out
program.
the last.
Yes.
We'll talk about that.
And we'll lay that out.
The next
Add the-
concept
Okay.
is
Thank
this,
you.
Good.
what Dr. Rare just mentioned about the auto cluster, transportation cluster program concept.
That would be another.
And that would be, 150 is roughly what it.
Also
instructors cost
reasons.
and salary benefits, depending
Mhm.
where you land on the schedule.
Because
what they take
that's
out
really
there, but
important, because a lot of
it's all
times
work
it's
on it.
classes.
He gave us 450,000 to expand SMART, and maybe we didn't get 3 new programs, we got 2. but
What's
we
getting,
determined
what's the
with
lever,
full
what's the
consensus
obstacle?
of the
Yeah.
supers,
We need
assistant
that.
supers, and the JOC,
We
that
do,
we
Sorry,
want to
Mr. Lewis.
prioritize maybe, and it's all timing.
Mr. Lewis, thank you for your
Enrollment
comments.
comes
We
up,
appreciate it.
It's just
You're
giving us the
welcome. I'll be
opportunity to
back.
expand.
And we appreciate
With
that.
thought
Yes.
and
Is
high
that a,
intention.
Yes,
Keep
and
in mind,
Money isn't worth anything.
if you don't spend it, it doesn't go away.
It doesn't go
I
away.
don't
We won't
do
spend
that.
it without the permission to the direction.
I got
You
no
didn't
problem.
do it.
Every dollar unspent goes back to the schools.
Yeah, the only question is, what does the demand look like for those areas? We know the demand for fire is there, right? We've got interest, we know it's
David, we can't hear you.
fine with- well, I can't talk louder, so.
I think all three programs,
Well,
demand-wise,
the ceiling's hearing you.
There's a historical demand for
yeah,
auto
Dave,
tech.
all three of them
small
are-
engines,
historically have a waiting
And
list
this,
every year.
we don't have that right now, but we just looked at enrolled track.
Yes.
And we know that there's about 25 students for auto tech.
Yes.
Easily first choice.
Yep,
And for maybe like 8 spots, if my memory serves me correctly.
I don't think you're wrong.
And
So where I saw in the
Yep.
enrollment numbers from when we reviewed it a couple weeks back, it looks like there's a huge demand in, or, sorry, there's several programs that have very few interested compared to others that have this glut. Okay? And I just want to make sure that what you guys are looking at is putting those new programs in areas that are going to help with the demand.
The withdrawals.
That's it.
And the other lever to look at too.
It's hard to see when we're talking about it. We
Yes.
don't have
The
that here
concrete.
to look at.
Exactly, but the other data point to look at too is the withdrawals. So how many students in these programs accepted a seat initially and then declined a seat before before they even got there?
And you had a total of how many this year?
We had, I think, 80, 85, 86.
Withdrawals.
Yeah, but to look at, to segregate that, dissect it and look at specifically what program, because that's another
That's important.
important data point to consider, to look at as we look at these.
so we also know historically, you have to be careful adding a section because it could also take away from a different section.
Yes,
I'll give you a good example.
That's a great point.
Diesel, when we originally had brought diesel on, small engines, diesel took a hit. So when we make these decisions, it's going to be, we'll provide that for you at the program. It'll be what labor market statistics. It's also, another important
That's great.
factor is going to be job placements. Can our employers handle it? And so we have all of that. I have that documentation, I'm sorry, it's not ready for right now, but it's done. So we had 23 students out for auto tech on job placements.
Yep.
We know that we could place another 15 students out on co-op. So we have the historical co-op numbers. We also want to make sure, because remember when we added small engines, diesel took a hit, we want to make sure that there's not an imbalance.
Right.
So we believe that having the monies available for that 5th transportation cluster, we also want to engage our OACs, our community. We want to make sure that there's historical data to support it, but we also want to be high intention too. So that's why we're just having that money there available if everything comes together.
You don't know, some of those withdrawals could have been people that got their
Yeah.
second choice. And if their
You
first
got-
choice was the auto cluster,
Yes.
and we added people to the auto cluster, they'll pull out of that second choice.
right, and that's one of the key points right there, why you want to look at it,
Yes.
to get a handle on it, exactly. Yeah, just
I'm
be-
also curious, though, beyond that withdrawal data, as far as expanding, what is your attrition after the first year in your programs? Do you have that as well? Are there programs
get
that kids gravitate to and then find out it's not as glamorous, or it's tougher, or whatever, and they're not completing it, moving on to something else? Not necessarily, I'm not trying to drill all the way down to who's using it as a safety school kind
No.
of thing, but are there programs that
Lose the
they
kids.
might have 2 to 5 kids drop out after the first year, kind of like a ninth grade thing is, you get through your freshman year in high school, you have a much higher rate of graduation than you do.
Yeah,
That's a
At the
tough,
beginning of
the year.
that's a
That's a really good
tough
point, though.
number to look at though,
Right.
too, because you do have some kids that go into one program for 2 years, and you can complete a program technically in 2 years, and then do another program for another 2 years, so they can get 2. And then the other thing, again, knowing what if they were put into their first choice helps that too. But yeah, there's a lot more gray areas than just looking at one spreadsheet,
but one
You
of the,
have to-
one of the greatest tools we have, to your point, is that super strong interest inventory from Myers-Briggs, that we've had these situations this year where you had a kid show up into welding and say, you know, I need to pivot, I get overheated. And it's something they didn't consider, and you administer the super strong, and yeah, they're closely aligned with welding, but there's like 2 or 3 other potential programs here that line up based on interest that this young man didn't even know existed, that it generated because it was linked to our program, so we helped create an outcome there. And I think that's a really critical part of a process.
Dr.
As we get
Cullen
to-
and I have discussed the withdrawal component. Mr. O'Donnell brought that up, I think, in the June board meeting. We do track that. It has to go into the system, the state system, but beyond that, there's more information other than I just changed my mind.
Right.
So we have those exit interviews, we have the paperwork and the documentation, that especially, this is good information for us to bring back to you, to have, especially with all new programs, the retention rate, the withdrawals, et cetera, and we will have that for any program that we're considering.
I was just curious, as we were talking, because to me, there's a big difference between 85 kids who just change their mind, don't want to go to tech school, and however many kids after the first year say, I don't want to do that program anymore. To me, that's a different mindset.
Yes.
Yes.
But I want to pivot back to your original question about big numbers. And I think it was you that brought up the concern of talking about facilities before we make that decision. And I don't know if that's an immediate pivot, or if it's taking the tactic of, and I know the idea, without being so generic, is trying to allocate, I'll say, instead of use up, that excess.
True.
And if that's the idea of designating it even as a kind of like a pseudo capital reserve, knowing there's projects that we might not have definitions for this year, as you're using it as a broad number, that might be a way to address that and say, yes, basically, yeah, let's try to make sure that, because I agree completely that I think if we say we're gonna send back $800,000 to the 3 school districts, and then we decide in the process that we need 500 of that back, the districts are gonna be like, well, wait a second, we've allocated that money now somewhere else too, because that was revenue that we didn't know we had. And it's best to work within, you did a great job overall. I'm gonna applaud the administration for having that excess, or being prudent and proper in doing everything. They should be able to have the ability to pivot and move things to benefit their ability to work within their budgets first. I think that's the priority. That would be my input from your original question.
True.
I have a question though too, because if you were to use that money to do startups on either a new program or building another, that's going to increase the funding for future years. We have the money to do it now.
Yep.
Agreed.
But what about in the future?
So if we
And
use that-
don't the district's boards have to weigh in on that decision?
Right, and when we met with certainly superintendents on this and my 3 counterparts at the district level, I certainly suggested to them, even though you're only gonna send us 9.4, I would put in your budget the higher number. Because we're gonna say, we only 9.4, but the actual money from districts might be 9.7 or 9.8. So I would put that higher number in your budget, so then the 26-27 budget isn't what you said, you have a big gap, big jump,
Yeah.
to fill that revenue gap. So it's, again, you put number in there, knowing that you're not gonna spend it at the tech school, then you can do a budget transfer and spend it somewhere else on the district level.
So I guess on the finance side, what we need to look at is, do we want to spend that money for future projects, or that may cost us more in the long run, that maybe we should look at differently, or do we want to use that money for existing things that need to get done facility-wise, or, I don't know, I'm just
Yeah,
asking the
and if I
question.
may,
It's all the same. I mean, you spend it now, you spend it later. pay me now, pay me later, you're still gonna pay me.
The real
Right.
question that we have in front of us right now is how important do we believe it is to reduce the amount of students on the wait list? And that's what this additional instructor would do.
Possibly.
No, I mean,
mean, they'd have
if
to
you
wanna go
add
into
one
that
in the auto
program.
cluster, you're gonna get more kids in the auto cluster, so you will have some
So we have
reduced
to look
from
at
that.
what is our wait list?
Chris,
So
you
that
don't know if you're gonna
we're matching
reduce the
the
wait
next
list or if
one.
you're just gonna attract other students that weren't considering it until the program was there.
Well, we already have a wait list for
But
that.
that's.
So it could
you're-
be more or
it's-
less.
You're not gonna be, yeah.
Yeah, it's a crystal ball kind of thing. It's a best guess. I think at this point, it's a pretty good guess that in the October, or September of '25, we will be able to fill
This didn't work.
the classes with an additional instructor. Because of the way of our budgets work, we need to know that now
Yeah.
and not at the end of the school year when Mick says. It has to be a guess.
Yeah, the challenge is, because like Mr. Holliday just said, we have to do the budget now. The district level, you have till May and June to do your preliminary, and your final in June, when you know you know a lot more what's gonna happen in August, September than we do today.
Are we gonna get a consensus from the board to move forward with this?
Well, I think,
Would you like to
I
move
think they're
forward
gonna have
with
to present the budget to the JOC and justify the numbers.
Would this wouldn't affect the budget for the one that you're presenting?
Well, sure.
That this would be for the following?
No.
Yeah, so two concepts. One, if we just concentrate on year one, which would be 25, 26, and what we built in there was 113,000 for year one. I'm not taking Casey's, but when we met with Casey months ago, thought at that point in time, 113 could get us by in facility needs for year one. It's the year 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that Casey, I'm sure is gonna go over soon, that we're thinking that's when we need to, before we send any money back, before we send it back, this is staring us in the face for year 2. Maybe we just hold it, have the districts agree that we hold it here in capital reserve or somewhere else to fund it instead of coming back to you and saying, hey, we gave you 500,000 last year, but now we gotta ask for it back because we have all these needs at the textbook. So it's better, we had it, we could say,
Yeah.
we're proactive,
That's
let
a
us
good
keep it.
question.
Here's the projects if you agree to let us do them or not. So year one, I think, the budget, just asking now, would be the 12, either 12.3 or 12.5 or 12.6, including that additional transportation cluster. That would be ideal, unless
Well, I think you
some,
presented
things
all
happen from now till next July through June, then we come back to the GOC, and if there's a big need, we have to
Okay, here, okay, there.
approve an expenditure or capital reasons, we deal with it then.
Okay.
Otherwise,
Fair budget.
we come, we push everything to year 2, and then we allocate accordingly from these excess revenues.
But we need to make that decision now as to what we're going to do with that.
I would say you just need to make the decision that you're gonna use the excess to balance the budget, which is the articles dictate that we do.
Right.
And then, don't make any decision yet on returning the balance. If we're gonna use 500 of the 800, why don't we just wait and not send the 300 back until we can have further discussions on the facility plan?
That's only relevant if you're gonna put a budget forward that needs to be balanced for those funds. If you put a more conservative budget forward, then you don't need to.
It's true too. No, it's, with any budget, yeah, absolutely.
I think the way I would do it, just me, present the bare budget, and then a narrative, say, to add an additional instructor to increase the enrollment in the automotive cluster of the 275,000, whatever number you want to put in there. 150. And then another option to add an additional instructor in, what was the second one?
Fire,
Well,
and then
oh,
there's a
fire,
third option.
yeah.
We did have a third option.
And the third, just present them. And if your arguments are good and everybody agrees with it, that's where it goes. But it's, you
And
know,
full disclosure, it's best guess right now because the auto track, besides instructor, having that 450,000 gives some flexibility to, rather than just being locked into those three particular areas. There's a little flexibility.
That's 150 for each one of them.
Yeah,
It is.
but I don't want it may not be 150, but just in broad terms, I don't want to mislead everyone to say, we
Yeah.
only have 150 for these three
Well,
things, because right now it's only a best guess.
And if it's only 100,000, then.
And we would never do anything without the approval of the JOC either, so
Right.
it's there as a stopgap, but if we don't need it, we won't spend it.
And this presentation, I'm sorry.
I think that was in November, we did that one.
I just don't want the same fight that we had over the culinary expansion. Now, granted,
It won't be
Culinary
the same.
that
expansion,
was a much
real-
later, that discussion happened much later in the budget
Yes,
process.
Yes, yes.
And, you know, there wasn't nearly as much,
Disclosure.
well, buildup. We didn't have all of this time in early January to be talking about this. This came
Well,
very
I've been
late.
talking about these things for 2 months,
Yeah.
since November.
No, I understand that, and that's what I'm saying. So I just wanted to make sure that this is a different approach than,
Yes.
than that was.
Yes.
So if I can summarize, it seems like you want to go to the meeting in 2 weeks, have the total JLC weigh in and vote. And from what I gather, you want one motion to read 12.3, bare bones. Another motion could be the 12.5 with fire. Another motion for the 12.6, and then discussion and somebody votes out, or whichever you prefer.
Well, I think
Just kind of
it
structure
takes
you
one
did.
motion, but then it has to identify which budget we're talking about.
Okay.
And do
You
we
know, you
have
have
any?
your budget A, B, C, D.
And then the second part, just to make sure that we're on the same page, that it's not misleading that the total sum, although we've identified three particular areas, we may just use that again for the expansion, if that makes sense. It's more of a composite versus three individuals.
But the other question I have, the last one, that we didn't really discuss,
Yeah.
the last part of that we didn't really discuss yet was the fire. I know Quakertown had proposed doing a fire program, but never ran it from lack of interest. Do we know if there's enough interest here, and is the community college gonna help find that? I think Dr. Friedman had said he could look out, you know, I guess contact the people in Quakertown that were interested in that program. And Mr. Lyons said he's got connections in the fire departments too. They
It's
would
on
help
the wrong
that.
track. I just emailed Matt Hatrack. Bucks County just put together a fire board.
Okay.
And we asked Matt to have the fire, which we'll be reaching out to Mr. Lyons and our fire contacts and having a meeting with all of our fire group. We just did that this morning.
Yeah.
And then, yes, and then we have a open house information night that will run on a Monday or
And that'd be
Thursday.
good to get
And
with
then
the fire companies.
Dr. O'Connell just said, I just met with Bill Schick, she just sent this to Matt and I, Chief of Palisades Regional Fire and Rescue. He's excited about the addition of the fire program. He also shared the following: if students enrolled in the fire program at UBCTS and join their local volunteer fire company, the fire company will supply the students with equipment, gear, air packets, and they'll be covered under the fire company's insurance and workman's comp. And Palisades Regional has an old fire truck they could donate to the program if needed to UBCTS.
Awesome.
So that's a
Now, they want
good,
some other stuff on the side.
So that's what I just wanted to make sure that plans were moving ahead for the fire, and that it doesn't sound like it'll be an issue, but that we had enough interest to run the program. Like,
Yeah, and remember,
how many
we're also
students
gonna-
do you need for a minimum?
we're gonna be running them through our law enforcement program.
Yeah.
I'd like to thank Chief Phelan and Mr. Ritter, because they structured it in such a way that offered flexibility to the college. So they're gonna be coming here to teach the class, but in the meantime, they'll be able to get additional knowledge of working with our law programs. So like, that's where that flexibility comes into play. We don't know. Let's say if there's a big number of students, can we then hire an additional person? And that's why we appreciate doing the à la carte, but we just don't have that information yet because our enrollment doesn't end. We talked about moving it up years ago, and we can't move it up.
But these are 11th and 12th grade students, so can there be 11th and 12th grade students that did not go through law enforcement that just want to come in to
Yeah,
fire
this is
in 11th
specifically
or
for
12th
them,
grade?
but the understanding is they're going to be 2 days a week, part of the law and public safety program.
Okay, so they will be here every day, but
Yes.
they're, okay.
2 days a week.
Yeah.
2 days a week.
Yeah. No, they'll be here every
Well, no,
day,
they're
the
gonna be
other
every
days
day,
they'll be
but
in law.
in the law class a couple days per week.
Okay, so you get them here.
Yeah.
Every day.
All those things that from Palisades Fire Department, is that just for Palisades students, or are they looking
Yeah,
at?
they're the only ones that are gonna be able to touch the fire truck. No, they won't be for
Seriously,
everybody.
no,
No,
the
you can't do
equipment, not the
that.
fire
Everyone's
trucks.
getting hands.
They are,
There's a dollar machine there, you put a dollar in it, allows them on there.
No, the equipment,
Only
because
the
you were talking
Palisades
about
students can
giving,
blow the
you know,
horn.
is that
No,
just
they're donating it to the.
to all of the students that,
as long as they join the volunteer, as long
So
as
If they
yeah, it
join
might be
their
that,
fire.
The personal equipment may be just for the Palisades.
yeah, that's what I was
students,
talking
yeah.
they're a very passionate group, and we do know that our volunteers really strengthen our community. We'll hear some good stories about the EMT being here. in
I'm
the
sure Mr.
future.
Lyons will share that information with the Quakertown people, and maybe they'll be able to get the same through the.
I don't know if they have a truck, but
They may not have a truck, but.
They don't have room for another
For
truck.
Yeah.
personnel.
I know they were just talking about equipment and things that they wanted to do.
Try to get them to donate too.
Tell
Two
them.
trucks.
Look what they're doing, man.
You wait.
A
And
lot
they're
of-
just gonna give us a Dalmatian.
A lot of the discussions are ongoing. So when we hired a second law enforcement working with the superintendents, they said we always wanted to make sure that it becomes a more broader than just the law and
Yeah.
public safety. Matt was there, and I pledged that we would do that. We would not just limit it as opportunities became available. Getting the second person, which was a great choice. Chief Phelan has brought so much to us. Now we're using the college, we're very strategic. Mr. Cormack and I have been in meetings with the college, and I think you know that, but our relationships with the college, our relationships to think outside of the box, pays dividends. So those initial conversations with the superintendents, our strong partnership with the college comes together, and then it benefits kids. And the fire, and those fire companies that need the volunteers, they're thrilled. It wasn't, so we're very proud about that. And so similarly with the budget, by giving us a little flexibility with those monies, it'll allow us to do similar things in the future. If you deem it necessary, if you don't, that's fine too. We would just go with the bare bones budget, but that's up to the JOC and the 27,
is it something that should be brought up in the programs committee?
yes.
Good point.
I think the finance committee has the money.
Right, yeah, finance, I mean, now, if the finance committee is putting this forward, but I
This did
think
go through programs.
The programs.
And this was presented in the programs committee and recommended that they move forward with these programs.
Right.
And that has a budgetary impact.
So now finance is weighing in.
weigh in.
And we could bring it back, especially with those areas as we're fine tuning with the labor market, with the withdrawal.
That's what-
A lot of
yeah.
those questions that you have, we want to make sure everyone's on the full
Yep.
agreement. So when you go back to your districts, yes, fully thought out, we're 100% with the information that we
Yeah.
have, confident that this is going to be successful.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank
Are
you.
you done?
It's your agenda.
you have
No,
anything
you're still
else?
finance.
I asked the
Well,
question, if we're gonna get a new fire truck, if Tony and I get a new place to live in, we need a place to store the fire truck.
No, we're just gonna get you guys new hats.
Yeah.
And we'll take care of the
Canvas.
donation.
That's right.
It's from
Great.
We got plenty
I
of
gotta-
room in the barn.
I was gonna say, that should go in
I got a
the-
crazy mix if you guys are.
Yeah, right.
You get Dalmatian footy pajamas and you can stay in the truck.
Yeah.
There you go.
Sky,
I've
incredible.
done that before, it's not that bad.
Here's the wicked sense of humor.
Honestly.
Hey,
But yeah,
That-
the
and-
rest are facility items.
that's when we can start looking at maybe putting a pole barn up or something if we
Yeah.
had to.
Yeah, there you go.
So let's just go right into the Tony, and then we'll finish up with Casey, but OSHA walkthrough.
We're next?
Yeah.
Okay. So for the OSHA walkthrough, everything went very well. So year over year, we improved greatly, and most of the actually, all the items on last year's OSHA walkthrough, like, we weren't like a repeat offender.
So
You know what I
5
mean?
years ago, we
So we
created
cleaned
an
it all up.
agreement with OSHA. In CTC schools in Pennsylvania, you're supposed to use your occupational advisory committees to come in and ensure your programs are safe. In the fall, we have a safety inspection checklist, but one thing that's missing is the kids and during the day. So when we created a partnership with OSHA and its Alliance, we have Scott Schemantel, who's from OSHA, who's an expert, and we also have someone from Indiana University of Pennsylvania, who's a hygienist. They go in and they tour all of the programs. Their expertise is invaluable. And so what we've done is each year they'll tour, making sure that our students and our staff have the highest level of care and the highest level of, being prepared. And they do that with the students. So we've been doing it for 5 years. It's invaluable, and this is one of our best times yet. The notes that Scott mentioned, Shamandel, kudos to Charlie and Tony. We give them full access. We don't give them on a tour just what we want them to see. We say, go in the nooks and the crannies, and it was the best, and especially with the maintenance building. Do you want to just do the quick overall?
Yeah, so.
Excuse me, it actually makes the teachers aware too, believe it or not. It makes them think, because there's a couple things in carpentry, it gets out of hand a little sometimes. Nothing against them, but there's certain things that you gotta watch. This, I never saw it before, they pointed out, what's his name, Scott, pointed it out to us, it makes everybody think, we, Tony, and.
We have a safety
Aware.
committee, which we
That's
have
awesome.
our labor, our nurse runs it, and along with myself and Tony and Charlie, we have the safety committee. We meet once per month. We have the reduced coverage, right? Reduced amount that we pay because we have a function safety committee. And we talk about everything, accidents, near misses, et cetera. And not only it benefit our kids here, it benefits them when they go on the work site. Many of those companies that are small, what is it, 80% of our chamber members are 10 members or less. So if you think about it, when they're on that work site, they get the highest level of care because we involve them in the process. So I'm sorry to.
No, that's good. So, so again, year over year, we improved. And what we did this year to make it even easier is, and Caprice did a great job, head of the safety committee. She took the list from OSHA and input it into FMX. So we took each, program, maintenance, construction, electrical, wherever, and everything's in FMX. So basically, we're gonna be closing out every program that needs, needs something done. So it's tracked a lot better this year. Maintenance, we got complimented on the maintenance garage, much safer and cleaner up there. The back of the property was a big one. Obviously, it's all cleaned up, much safer. And again, all of the items that were on last year's list were pretty much taken care of. So it's not like we had repeat stuff. We just found. And a lot of the things, if you go through the list, are small. Like there's nothing really major that needs to be done, which is nice. So.
Is it the same people that come? Are they
Same,
The same?
say, yes,
individual?
Scott's the same person every time, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly, and he usually, like
Good for
Dr. Herrera
consistency.
said, yeah.
He's on cell phone, so like, let's say we
Yeah.
had a concern about a student that's on medication, you know, some high-level situation, we'll call Scott, he's available pretty much 24/7 for us to say, how would you handle this on the work site? Really, really helpful. Eye wash
Very good.
stations, it's just, his level, his eye and his attention to detail is unbelievable.
Something on our end that I never knew, we never even thought of, and it's a shame that we didn't think of it either, but it's the eye washers in these rooms. We have hard water up here, pretty hard.
Yeah,
Right, we
flush
did it.
those things.
What's
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
We try to do the best we can to make it softer, but it's pretty hard. But those yellow eye wash things get caught.
Caps.
Yeah, you gotta flush those things.
Gotta flush them, replace them when needed, so there's been some, where, yeah, there hasn't been a lot of attention to those units, so we're gonna be replacing all the eye caps, cleaning them, stuff like that, so stuff's on order now. But yeah, there's a lot of little details that you brought to the table, which was great.
And we can thank Quakertown for getting rid of the eyesore out here.
What's
Got
that?
these nice containers that
Oh, yeah.
everything's out of sight.
Yeah, everything's clean. Now, this area is exceptionally clean right now because we had cranes in here for the rooftop units that came in. But it gave Bill the push to keep going with his area out there. He's almost done. He's getting rid of a lot of stuff too. So it's going to be about 90% better.
At the
by
same
spring.
time, we also had the insurance person come through,
Yeah, from
Steve.
Region, same,
Yeah.
similar, well, I think one of you guys took him around.
Yeah.
Similar report. There was
Well,
nothing-
that's what I said, I commend the school for doing that, inviting OSHA in when
Yeah.
most job sites like dread the sight of OSHA coming in to do an audit, you know? But I think that that's a great learning opportunity for students as well, you know, of how to deal with the OSHA people.
Yeah.
And how to-
Yeah, exactly. So anyway.
Yeah, Shea Region came by, same thing. They only found out everything else was glowing in their rating system for potential liability. The only thing they mentioned is a recommendation, I think, small engine, some of the storage issues in part of the classrooms, very, very minor.
Right,
So,
yeah.
this whole building in Empire, the only thing
Tomorrow
there's
is
some
good. Yeah.
storage issues, so.
Yeah.
Equipment and supplies.
Again, kudos to everybody.
Awesome.
Top down.
Yeah, good.
All right, Tony has that list.
Yeah, next EMT building, like Mike said, they moved in, they're pretty much moved in. Friday there, actually spent the entire day here, and they took a call from here, and the response time was so much faster. I don't know exactly where they went, but
So
I
they're
know
here
they
even
took
when
a
the
call.
school's closed?
What's that?
They're here even when the school is.
Thank you,
Yes,
David.
yeah.
Thank you
We
for
were,
adding
maintenance
that.
was here
Yeah.
for a few days last week doing
Weekends too?
projects. Weekends? I
It
don't
could
know. I
be,
believe
yes.
weekends, yes.
I think
Yeah,
we
the
must-
the
7
MOU
days a
was
week.
specific to allow them 365,
Yeah.
24 by 7.
Chief Tuttle is so thrilled and he thanks the JOC, and that helped that person
Yeah.
out, because that saved 12, 13 minutes response time
Easy.
easily.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So they're very happy. The place looks great. There was one thing they brought up to us, which we're working with them on, possibility of putting up a small partition or a wall to basically close in a small office area, to separate it from the garage. So we're looking into the permits required.
They're
and,
willing to pay for it.
Exactly.
And Kevin Crawford said that his students, if the JOC is so inclined, would build it. We reached out to Rich Shelley, who's the permit. We always want to make sure that and he said yes, that we would need permits. He would consider waiving the
Yes.
permits.
Yep.
And if the JOC is okay with us moving forward, we would send those plans to Rich in order to help build that partition to separate the employees, the workers from the bay.
And then, they didn't mention anything about moving that air handling unit either, that would.
Well, no, so I'm glad you brought that up. We fixed that issue.
Oh,
So
you did?
the unit, we reduced, I guess, the power, whatever they did. They reduced it like 80%, so you can barely hear it now.
Oh, good.
It's amazing. Like, you wouldn't think, yeah, so we fixed that issue. We can't remove it from there, but, it's, we fixed the issue. So, and like I said, we got a materials list together, they're willing to, basically, come up with the funds for the materials if we wanna, position that to Kevin as a, opportunity for his kids. So I think it's just a wall and a door, so I think it would be a great, opportunity for them. So we're gonna continue to work on that as long as everybody's fine with that.
You okay with that? Does anyone have any concerns with that?
Do it.
Okay. Next, we have the SDS sheets. I think we mentioned this before. I've been working with Steven on, we have a company, was it MS Online, you
It's
call it, or
SDS
Velocity?
Online, yeah, they have all of our safety data sheets, they
Yeah.
collect it.
So I'm working, basically, we felt they were charging us a lot for what they were providing. So we went to another company, Environmental Control Systems, a few other school districts in the area
We
use them, and you guys use them. They gave us a proposal to come in and basically overhaul everything. They would spend time on site and go through and rebuild what we actually have chemical-wise on the property. And the plan includes obviously getting, new copies on the drives from the Knox box and our copies, a hard copy of the book, as well as an easier access to update it. Like there's one mailbox you send it to that does the updates for you. We also get an educational piece. If they come in, rebuild everything, they would also do a training for us. I forget, it's like a 2-hour awareness training. And then the plan also includes 6-month re-inspections up to 3 years. So it's, I'm still gonna give Velocity is who handles, and I guess MS Online now. So I'm gonna position to them what we need done, because they're kind of outdated right now. They haven't done anything in about 2 years, so maybe 2.5. So I'm gonna give them an opportunity to see what it would cost for them to come out and kind of do what they're offering, and then we'll see what would be the best option. But we've been kind of keeping Velocity at bay right now, not until we figure out which company we want to go with. So, any questions, concerns? Are you happy, Chris? Are you guys happy with the environmental
To be
control
honest with
systems?
you, I've never
Out of your
had to
wheelhouse?
review an MSDS sheet.
Yeah.
But I haven't heard any complaints, and I think, are they the same company that also does like the water testing and the asbestos and? Yeah, they offer additional services too.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so I have two. The one proposal is just for them to come in and overhaul, but there are additional services we can use them for, which is certified hygienist, what is it, asbestos and all that stuff.
Yeah, and we've utilized them for those things, so I've seen those reports coming
Yeah.
from them, and I have no issues.
So we're working through that. We're gotta make a decision
Well,
soon.
he's gonna get prices. and
Yeah, I have the
opinions.
one price for environmental control. I just don't have velocity yet.
So he's gonna get the price for
So
velocity.
it won't be on the January agenda.
No, you can, if he gets it by then, I have,
I could probably add it if I should have velocities, but I can get it probably by next week.
We should.
Yeah, I should be able to get it by next week. And then
It
we
just has
can
to be on
go
the
from
Bill's
there.
list.
So we'd like to
It's not
move it
gonna
sooner than later.
As
on
long as
this.
it makes the agenda.
It
The
doesn't-
timely agenda.
yeah.
We're ready tonight.
I don't know that
That-
it needs to be a separate agenda item, does it?
No, because we already.
It's a
ordered the
contracted
services
service.
without motion.
Yeah.
We already
Would
ordered
come
the
through
service,
in the
but we
bills
wanted
list.
We wanted your input.
Yeah.
Now, I saw you had one more thing on there for that pickup truck.
Yes,
Snow removal.
Did you drive it tonight? Did you bring my truck?
No, I would have, I wanted to.
No.
And I think, I think in Quakertown, if they keep passing this
So-
back and forth, so I think our facilities manager said we have the truck,
Okay.
available, and now our finance, they wanna send it through finance committee now, so.
Okay. Makes
That's,
sense.
and we haven't met since
Yeah, that
November,
makes sense.
so, I think
It's on the agenda for
facilities,
which I'm sure will
And
also.
finance too,
and
yeah.
finance as well.
That's fine.
And so we have an agenda setting meeting.
Monday.
Monday.
but when can we get it, like, we have to like vote and finalize
We
this, so
can't
that's what.
vote until the board meeting.
Yeah, January third week in, fourth week in January, that's a problem.
Joy, we'll be there the next day to pick
Well,
up.
I mean, yeah.
The next day.
We'll be there in the hour you
Come to the meeting.
vote on it. If it's a no, then, we'll just hotwire.
Here,
Matt, Ronald had to do it.
if there's some way that,
I think we're getting
maybe-
closer to a Monday.
maybe you can ask.
Monday's 2 to 4, but then we have an
That's-
18-incher
I
coming.
literally,
Maybe Rob could lend it to the tech school some way, and then, until we figure out
Or you mean just garage it over here for?
whether we're gonna buy it or
Just
sell it. 'Cause
garage.
if
We're
not
gonna
using
wash it
if
and wax
it's
it for you.
spare up there, and
No,
we are.
I actually was with Rob today and I was looking at it with him and we looked at the plow, we looked at the truck. I mean, the truck has like
50-some thousand, yeah.
I mean,
Well, that's what I said, whether it's sold or donated, I mean, I'm sure we have the money in the budget that we could figure it out if it's sold, but we just have to figure that out and approve
To
it.
be honest, I mean, look, full transparency, I think I just had to have a call into the solicitor to figure out what the easiest method is.
Yeah, that's what I think, yeah.
Donation is usually easiest.
Yeah,
That's
but the
what I-
board
that's
still
what I
gonna have to
assured.
approve it.
Well, no, I mean, in all honesty, I mean, that's what I kind of thought, because it's a little bit different. If you're selling it to the tech school, we're actually buying it. So it's,
Yeah.
that's the uniqueness of it.
But Chris, to your point, I know we have, like, in all seriousness, I know they're tracking something big maybe in the next 2 weeks.
And that's why I was gonna
Um,
see if there was any way that maybe he can even draw up some type of agreement to loan it to us until,
Monday, there's
Jeff.
potential from 2 to 4.
Yeah, so Monday, I think we're gonna be okay.
but it's the.
But it's the one after that. Now, I do have, it says on the agenda here, snow removal, which partially was the truck, but the other part was I got quotes from multiple companies to assist with 6 inches and above. So I selected the one company we've done work with before, and, their rates are a little cheaper than some of the others, but I can get, like, for example, a 12-foot, what is it, a track loader with a 12-foot snow box.
Oh, okay.
You pay per act, basically it'll show up, we'll deliver it,
Oh,
and
you're
with a
just
driver.
talking, with the driver.
Yeah, with a driver, and it's like $175 an hour. So
Okay.
they'll come out. So I have a plan in place if this large storm comes to fruition.
Because Melissa Nice would love to run one of those.
Yeah.
As long as
But
it has a cab.
Obviously, you're doing it.
We're right, if this storm is gonna be big, if it
No,
does come to fruition, yeah, if we could borrow that truck, and we still need assistance, of course, because getting rid of that much snow is
And
a
that's what I
challenge.
was gonna ask, if we're
Yeah.
not going to be using it, because I think we have Ron.
We're not using
Yeah, so at least until we can make the final decision, at least lend it. Or Rob can even just store it here, and we'll just.
We keep it next to the fire truck.
But that was the other part of the agenda, was we do have a plan in place to get assistance for this larger storm.
Okay.
Like I said, I can
it.
get.
Stop saying larger storm.
I know, it's coming, I'm telling you, it's coming. I'm just trying to be honest. But yeah, I have the trucks and manpower.
Okay.
That's that.
Thank you. Casey?
All right.
Good evening, everybody. Yeah, just remember, it's January, it's gonna snow.
Yeah.
Just tell everybody every single
Well,
day.
it's farm show week, it always snows
Yeah, it
farm
does.
show.
Farm show weekend?
It is farm show weekend, and
Oh,
it
farm
always
show.
snows, so yes, 25 years of knowing this organization. It's
Really?
every year. Without a doubt. I think one year it was just monsoon level rain, but
Yeah.
other than that, you're fine, so, yes, so.
Thanks.
All right, so we're going to go over a couple of different things that are occurring as far as capital projects here. Number one, as Tony was just mentioning, we had a crane pick on Friday, this past Friday, the 27th. That was to complete out the last 2 remaining items on Visa Amendment 1. If everybody remembers, those air handling units were back ordered for months, and then just timing that to when we could actually bring a crane on site and get them on without students and everybody else intervening. So I'll show you a couple pictures real quick. It's hard to see. So that's kind of what your crane looked like. By the way, those are your sea crate containers you were just talking about earlier. So yes, a little bit of a long arm reach from the crane to get over top of them, but we were able to get both of them off. Both of the old units off, new units back on, all within about 4.5 hours, which is pretty fast. So what I will say is what leads into this, and there's a union electrician in the room, so I will definitely give him credit for this as well. Everything that goes into a crane pick has to do with about 4 weeks of pre-planning, so that when everybody's standing there, not everybody's looking around going, it's not my problem, right? So there's weeks and weeks of going through a pick plan and making sure that everybody's geared up. And there are about 10 total people on site, all in different aspects, right? We had sheet workers, we had union steam fitters on, union electricians, everybody working hand in hand to try to make this happen very, very quickly. You were back up and running by the time I left. I think I left at about 3:30 on Friday, and then just some final control wiring and stuff that was here this past Monday. So we're down to basically just the punch list items now. So all of that other piece was done. You were up and running on heat. The steam fitters were also able to reroute the hot water. These are not hot water driven. These are electric heat driven. It's just this, if everybody remembers, some may remember, these two air handling units were actually one of the originals to this building. This before these buildings were connected. So you have to remember that these don't run on chilled water like the new units, right? So the chiller doesn't control these. These are all electrically driven, right? So they're direct expansion. What's that for cold? Yes. Yep. So.
You know the model numbers, don't you?
I was there when, no, I nowhere near it.
I am happy to say that Mr. Hollowell was here as a board member. I was here as prior. I was as a tech. No, I was a tech. I think I was 20 or was it like 19 when these things went in. So many, many years ago. I think they were installed in 2000, 2001. So yeah, but great replacement. Everything's up and running. We were able to get them integrated. You now have a higher level of integration in your building management system than you ever had with these. So that's kind of the goal whenever we do these. They're not ancillary controllers that are pulling pieces. It's a direct board on these units so that when your maintenance folks are actually looking at them, they're actually seeing what's running on the unit, not somebody else's interpretation, okay? Chiller compressor project, that's now completed. That's been completed and done. Tests came back positively with 0 acid in that system, so that's good. Your generator load and arc flash assessment project, that preliminary report is in my hands. That was received over the break. I'm reviewing that with our internal engineers, and then basically what we're going to do is sit down with your administration, go over the findings, and then you all should be seeing this in February. What we are working, because we had some wiggle room left within this, because Site Logic had already conducted the full load test months before this committee agreed to pay us and Snyder Hoffman to do this detailed report. We had a little bit of extra room, so what we're going to probably end up doing is trying to schedule at least a 4-day full assessment, and this is actually putting data loggers on all of the power feeds coming off of the generator. And then what we're actually going to do is we're actually going to kill the main power feed into the building on a weekend, preferably not a freezing cold weekend, but one that we could deal with power being out for a couple hours. Because to be quite honest, it's the only way to actually tell where some of these circuits are actually drawn. We've spent hours and hours and hours with electrical engineers in that room, and I will tell you that we actually, by complete happenstance, Chris will probably laugh at this too. Complete happenstance sometimes when you find out what circuits on this panel that just say existing that nobody can figure out where it goes, because in a ceiling like this, it'll go 15 different places. 3 of those circuits were running your vestibule heaters, which are basically like little electric heat units in the old air handling units on the roof.
So they don't need, no longer gonna be.
They are no longer required because you're not running hot water piping up there. You want that there when you have hot water, you have cooling piping, so that in case you lose power, those are on generator loads, so that it keeps it warm enough that it doesn't freeze, right? Usually you're not worried about things inside the building freezing until you hit like 3-4 days of 20 degrees or below. Anything on that roof is gonna freeze pretty quickly. So those are now dropped back, right? Now they're just running, they're not on the generator. So the nice thing is as we continue to do this, we're actually dropping load from that generator, right? We already removed some very inefficient walk-in coolers during that renovation project. So you're already getting to a point that you're probably at that 85%, well below that, but we just want to be sure. So this additional testing with that company will just make sure that you're under that 85%, right? So
now you got three 50 amp, service wires up there that they
20
want.
amps, yeah, they're not, yeah, I wish they
was
were.
gonna say, maybe they can add
If
some
they're
more
50, we would So, yeah, if I shed 150 amps on that generator, I wouldn't even be worrying about your load test right now. But yeah, they're really 20s, and to be quite honest, the way that generator just, I mean, that original generator was put in 2000, 2001, and it's just changed hands so many times. There's just added on panels. There's 6 sub-panels off of that main generator, and each one of them has circuits that go everywhere. So trying to track that down is not exactly an easy task, right? Short of putting an entire
How are you
electrical.
gonna be able to do the load test on it, because you're not gonna know what to turn on.
Hence why we need it cold enough that everything's gonna drive, right? We can't do that full assessment during the summer because you're not running your boilers. Your boilers and your distribution pumps are the heaviest load on that, right? Everything else that, believe it or not, the legally required stuff is actually the lowest load in this entire
Well,
building.
especially
It's all
since
your
they've all been
ancillary.
switched to LEDs too, the lights.
We're gonna talk about that in a little bit, yep, we're gonna talk about that.
But
So-
I'm sure the boilers and those circulation pumps have all been changed since 2001 and are probably much more efficient as well.
Relatively, but it's still, it's still
They
a
are
lot,
what they are.
right? They're still, it is what it is, right? They are more efficient than they were before, yes, but you're moving a lot of water, and that just is gonna take power, so. Anyway, that preliminary report is handed off. We should be actually handing that back to administration and this committee at the February Facilities Committee meeting. Operable partitions project, it's dark out there, so we can't really see it. We can turn on the lights later. Those partition walls were installed beginning of December, like second week of December. Yep, long time coming on that one.
How long did that take?
Hold on.
How long?
It's not done yet.
Still not done.
Almost there, almost there. So, no, it's,
I can hear Chuck
Encourage,
now. I can see
encourage,
Chuck.
come on.
yeah, no, they're totally fine, and this is out of any of our control. Unfortunately, there was a manufacturing default. These things all connect with these rods with internal, and they have to all connect to each other. 3 of those pieces of the 20 were not aligning correctly, so they had to get reordered. So those are on a punch list item. I'm working with Modern Fold on your behalf right now to try to kick them to get these going. The doors are hung, everything else is good, they fit, but what that rod does is when you crank it on the one side, it actually drops the seals to the ground and to the wall. So that's what actually makes them air and sound tight, right? So it's a small piece, it's to be expected. You all have heard this from me a million times. If you don't
Oh, it is
expect
to
a
be
punch list
expected?
item,
Is that the
what's
phrase?
that?
Is that the phrase, it should be expected?
Any punch list item should be
I'm
expected.
sorry.
You shouldn't have to expect
Honestly,
this
not
part to
resist.
to fail, but you should expect some level of punch list on every project, is what I try to tell
Been
you,
dealing with
right?
site
So
logic for a
there's
while.
always a follow-up piece.
I'm a little beat up.
Yeah. I get it. You would hope that it didn't happen after that long, but we're advocating on your behalf. We should have that, I think they were saying within a week or two. They're gonna come back, they install them, we're good. They look amazing, they function, the tracks function on that.
You throwing a party when it finally works?
Just close them all.
Yeah, just close them all up and have 3 different.
Well, 3
Well,
individual
they-
parties, so we can hear each other.
There's rooms in there.
You could have 3 different dance parties to celebrate it now, because you'll have 3 separate rooms, so. All right, so all kidding aside, it's great to see that project finally come to a close. We'll keep tracking this. Hopefully next time you all see me in February, it'll be just a closeout.
Mark that down.
Okay, that's what they look like. Just a couple of points of note. These right here, these contraptions are called adapter curbs. This is especially important for the facilities team. What this allowed them to do is avoid having to recut into the roof, create new blocking, and have to do all new penetrations. This is actually an adapter curb that was custom fabbed for both of these units so that it holds them up, but happy that it still meets that roof line. So unlike the gigantic annex air, when you drive up and you see it, you think this is like a crime lab. It's usually where you see those. You can't even see these units from the roof, from the reveal of the building. So that's good. And they're much, much more efficient. And I can tell you that when they're on, you almost have to you have to put your hand on it to even know that it's actually on. That's how wide they are. So as far as space underneath, especially the one over top of this area, as you use that room, it's going to be a whole lot more.
Guaranteed for how long?
I believe they have a 10-year warranty. I'll double check for you. I'll double check. They are York, what used to be York, which is unfortunate. Well, can't say that.
You're not.
All York products are now owned by Johnson Controls. So when you see something that says Johnson Controls on it, yeah, I know, you laugh, because they've become, the ed admins will understand this, they became the Blackboard of that space. Blackboard was one of those companies that went out and bought every single possible software company that had to do anything with education. Johnson Controls is kind of doing that on the mechanical side. Everything is, they're just trying to acquire them. So you're going to see a lot of Johnson Controls. That does not mean you're running Johnson Controls. You're still on your non-Anchor systems. Just that's the matter. Okay, annex roof project update. All the work has been completed, reviewed by us and Garland Roofing. All the punch list items were completed and closed out as of the end of November. We're now just waiting for that final warranty documentation from Garland Roofing. Then your final invoicing, I think our retainage was down to like 4% maybe.
Yeah, 11,000.
Yeah, so it's down to 4% of total project, which is pretty much normal. Once we have that document, we sit down with your facilities team administration and say, okay, here's final sign-offs. You guys should see that final sign-off in February.
So I have a question. You have
We're going to talk about that.
new
Hold
leaks
on.
in here.
Yeah.
When they come out for that, hopefully before we get 3 feet of snow on top of it.
Yeah.
I'm already 3 steps ahead of you, so
Yeah.
you're reading ahead. Hold on.
So Garland was gonna put a maintenance plan in for these in, is that part of?
It's actually already is, so I'm gonna, I'll tell you in 2 slides, so keep myself on track here. This is just that overview of the annex roof. Remember that this is the beginning of that infill building, right? I hate that name, but that's what it's called, the connector that connects the annex and the main building. That is a rubber-based roof. That is not part of this. That is a third different system. Your old cafeteria area and there both have them. They're actually Carlisle-based systems. So we're going to be working to get those maintenance plans for those 2 roofs as well. Okay, some of the other forecast items that we've been working on. We last met with this group in November. We previewed what the MySite IQ tool is already looking like with all of your assets loaded in. We continue to build that out with all your various projects that we're working with your maintenance team, your administration to figure out what your priorities are. As you may recall from November, some of those priorities quickly changed and we had to kind of refocus some things because of what we found as far as humidity levels and just some of the systems not functioning properly. The easy early look that I can tell you is by doing that process, I was able to bring our mechanical engineers in who analyzed these systems and realized that this was not necessarily a design issue, it was a software and building control system that's probably existed here for at least 6 years. Just again, through the handshake of all these different building management systems. The reheat cycles were not working correctly because to remove humidity from the air, we basically need to inject hot water into that. One of your boilers is set up for summer, but it wasn't actually pulling that correctly. The other problem was, as those different hands are in that system, your set points for your chiller kept getting bumped up and up and up. And what that means is by the time all that chilled water gets all the way from the other side of the campus, all the way down to your baking and to your cosmetology area, you were well above that, that expected set point of 58 degrees. you were actually putting like 70-degree water into their cooling system, which isn't exactly gonna do a whole lot when you need the space to be a whole lot cooler.
Especially if you have reheat coils, running to try and counter that, you're adding heat to already warm water and you.
And double that on just the environmental changes that are happening and the level of humidity that has been hitting this area. Sustained high humidity levels that we didn't necessarily have in this particular area 20 years ago. You're starting to see 100% humidity, 90, 92% humidity, way more hot, humid days than you would arguably 20 years ago, at least from what we're seeing. So.
I don't know, it was pretty hot.
It was always been pretty hot. I mean, yeah, I agree. It's even hotter when you didn't have any air conditioning here at all, but that's a whole different argument that I'm not gonna get down. What I know and what we see is higher humidity levels today than we have. That's what we're responding to, and that's what we're talking about. So, yes, Chris, to your point, those reheat cycles then working, especially if they're electric reheat, you're actually turning on a heat coil in the ceiling in the middle of the summer, and you don't have enough cooling capacity in that coil. You're literally just blowing around warmer air into an already warm space. So that makes sense, okay? The other piece of the MySite IQ, next week, so part of the nationwide capacity of SiteLogic is we have a commercial and industrial team that specializes solely on lighting. We're responsible for, I don't know, 15 of the Walmart distribution centers in the entire country and redoing all of them to LED lighting. So you had mentioned this is a request from this committee, is to do a better lighting assessment to figure out long-term plans. Because believe it or not, 90% of your units, because they were done in 2014, were not LED. These are fluorescents.
I think almost every light bulb in this building and in the parking lots was already converted under that PICO rebate plan under the former.
Yeah, but they're not LEDs.
These are not LED.
T11s or whatever.
If you
I
heard that,
thought he-
it was.
Yeah, I thought he was putting every bulb in the place was switched to LED.
Yeah, you might,
Never
honestly, Chris, you
Yeah.
might have 14 bulbs that are LED
Really?
in the entire facility. So what this, now you have CFLs. CFLs just become a different problem, right? You're just
No,
kicking the can further down the road with CFL because now you have hazardous waste when they get replaced, right? So, no, that's absolutely just a correct understanding. Very, very little is LED here. Lots fluorescent, lots of CFL. So what this team's gonna do is go through literally shop by shop, hallway by hallway, and analyze all of that, and then be able to give us back a full plan so that you have a long-term plan so that we can work with PICO or whatever rebate system is working in the future to get a better plan to try to piecemeal these. So you're not outlaying millions of dollars in one shot, but we can layer this in with your annual facilities maintenance plans or layer it in as you redevelop other new programs.
And that's how, in my building, we've just been doing like one room at a time.
Okay.
When one room,
Exactly.
when you get like 5 or 6 light bulbs out eventually, you just go in and swap that whole room with LED, then save the old CFL light bulbs to use as spares in other places.
Gotcha.
Just,
Yeah.
you're not buying any more spare CFLs,
Yeah.
you can use the good ones, but we're using all the same fixtures, so we're just removing the ballast from them and getting the new tombstones or whatever they're called. the little-
Drivers.
Yeah, they're not even drivers, the new ones run right off the 277 volts we have. Yeah,
Yes, we haven't,
they
we've
have
been
the drivers
using,
built into the bulb.
yeah, 'cause what few bulbs we've had to change here and there over the course of the last 10 months, we've just been using current stock. We
Yeah.
haven't purchased outlaid any money yet.
Yeah,
So now we can start.
And that's the nice thing about getting this assessment, because you'll look at direct wire, you'll also look at direct bulb, like there's some that you keep ballast in, we prefer to remove the ballast completely.
yeah,
It's
because that's just
a fail
another
point.
failure point.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But you also have dimming features in some of these rooms, so we gotta play nice with all of those systems, so.
Well, that was
And
the
then we're
other.
also gonna be assessing the Leviton system, which we talked about last meeting, and trying to figure that entire.
Yeah, Chuck
system
said he
out.
was gonna get, he knows somebody from Lutron, that said
Lutron.
that they would come in and look, I'll
Yeah.
follow up with them and see.
Yeah, yeah, and I can connect with them, we can try to piece them into this process and say, okay, let's look at their lighting control system as well, because you are in a backyard of Lutron. I mean, it would make sense at this point to take a look at it, right? Potentially. Okay. So that full lighting assessment, it's all next week. Lovely storm coming in, potentially, I always say that. So this gentleman's flying in, I think, from our Texas or San Diego office. I can't remember which one he's coming from. So I'll be coordinating that. I'll be walking him through the first day or two here and making sure that it's all in.
But if we have a storm, the kids won't be here, so you'll be all right.
Possibly, yeah. It depends which office he's from, because he's not gonna know anything about driving in the snow if he's from San Diego, but we'll see, so. All right, roof assessments, this is what you all have asked, and there's a lovely example, 3, 4 examples that I see right over Mr. Hollowell right now. 5, I counted 5, all right, I was quick, I only counted 4. So.
It may just be one leak that's dripping off of multiple things.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we'll determine that, regardless. I'm just looking at examples, right? Exemplar is roofs that you see. Okay, all right, so we're gonna go with 6.
Better move on quick, because it's at 6 now, it'll be 7.
It's gonna be 7 or 8 by Monday, yeah, so, and that is the key, right? So, as everybody knows, you now have a 30-year warranty over the annex building. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, it was just prior to me starting at SiteLogic. This committee worked with Garland Roofing and SiteLogic to try to re-warranty the main building roof. You are under warranty in this building. They've already done some corrective actions, including taking some stuff down 2 layers back in August or September and relaying a whole new area. Munn Roofing, who has done a great job with you, for you in the annex building, is directly tied into this. They are a warranty provider for Garland, so we're working with Garland. I'm actually coming out tomorrow because of the storm. I wanted to make sure we get eyes on these sections. Tony had called me this morning and said they had more
Can they
leaks.
even temporarily, or sometimes do they come out and fix it right on the spot, or? do they
Potentially,
just
yeah.
look, or-
Well, and because I was on the roof with Munn last Friday, we already looked at some of the other areas like culinary arts was still leaking. Unfortunately, some of these, and I explained this to Tony, it's playing whack-a-mole, right? There is no, you rarely walk on a roof and go, yup, that's it, right? These are seams that are starting to leak and that water travels underneath. So we have to apply a fix, you wait to see, and if it still leaks, you try to keep going, right? So you're playing a game of whack-a-mole. So we'll continue working through this. The good news is you're not paying for any of this. We just work through it and try to find the best solution. Eventually, it will get fixed. And it's not because a lack of action, it's because short of ripping up the roof and replacing it, which I don't see Garland paying to do, they're gonna try to fix pieces.
Tony, we'll give you plenty of budget for that ceiling tile spray paint.
Yeah, I'll get a couple cases of it.
John,
Yeah.
what's that? Yeah.
So we have a few spots we found that we're gonna work on.
I have one in my basement
What's
always,
that?
for my air conditioning lines that go through. There's like a low spot, and they condensate through. I haven't insulated so much.
Oh my God.
Dry spell.
Yeah.
Well, it rained out.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, your Garland team has been absolutely phenomenal. You had 2 different, completely unrelated to roof issues in the annex. You had 2 drain issues. Then one was just a clogged drain further down. We have no idea how long that drain's been clogged. But when that first rain happened in September, you started just pouring water inside the building. We were able to get Munn and Garland out here within
Hours.
2 hours.
Yeah, a couple hours.
And
came right
they
out.
ended up snaking the drain and realizing that it was 100% blocked down the chain. So most likely that drain wasn't working for years and years, and now that we got it actually functioning, you realize they have a different issue. So it's totally okay, totally, to my point earlier, totally to be expected somewhat, Mr. Fleming. We don't plan for leaks, but they're gonna happen, so we just have to react.
Unless we put a pitched roof on, right?
Unless you put a pitched
Standing
roof,
seam.
but I
There you
will
go.
say standing seam
Standing
will
seam, pitched
leak
roof.
sometimes, so. Your gutters will definitely leak, but, yeah. All right, it's a ton of information, so stop me, if you have questions, but lots of things still going on. You're gonna see more information on my site IQ as we continue to develop these final pieces and plugging them in. The good news is one of the final aspects If you all remember the previous long-term plan, there was like 1.8 million in to put dehumidification cycles in all of your air handling units. Some of that work that we've been doing in the past month and a half has been proven to say we don't necessarily need that 1.8 million. It's going to be a lower amount. There are going to be some of your units that are going to need a specific dehumidification cycle, probably your graphic space and maybe machining or a couple other areas that are highly sensitive to rust formation. But outside of that, looks like all of these units actually do well. The units we're investigating right now have reheat cycles.
And the new ones, obviously.
New ones, yeah, that's the benefit of having that electric heat cycle now, is they just fire that equal when they need to. They pull the moisture right out.
My site,
My site IQ, yep.
when will they have access to it?
Within the next, I would say, 30 days as we're finalizing these pieces of projects. So the next layer is we sit with your administration, I go back over all these projects, and then once they move forward, then you will all see that final copy. And when you have the final copy, they'll already have
And you say
access.
it's an interactive site, so
It is,
they
yeah.
can go in anytime, once it's set up.
Yeah. Yeah, and then as we get closer to budget season and we sit down with Stephen and we start looking at what you're projecting and what your potential are, we can actually play with that a little bit and move those projects and see what that tail looks like, right? As you get that longer tail perspective.
That's within the next 70 days.
Yes, yes. What, your budget cycle?
No.
Yeah,
No.
yeah, with our
Getting
stuff,
access
yeah,
to the
yeah,
data.
we're
We're
definitely
waiting
getting,
Yeah.
yeah, we're definitely getting very close. So if you're
Okay.
saying the turnover of that is
So
within.
I gave you a couple extra days
Yeah,
there.
there, you gave me 10, I appreciate that.
And we're gonna be projecting out about how far with that.
10 years.
What is, it has
10 years.
capability to go 10.
The head capability of going 25 to 30, and that will be built in, because like your annex roof is already built in at 30. But that's, like, let's be honest, that's a little ridiculous,
Yeah.
because the cost of rough orders of magnitude.
Tens actually.
If I could look at 30, I wouldn't be in this job, right?
Yep.
It would be-
Five is what we need.
Yeah.
10 is nice.
5 to
That's why I asked.
5,
What are
7,
we
and
expecting
10,
in 70
right?
days?
10 is a good long
I'll be-
term tail.
I'll be nicer. What are we expecting in 72 days?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. 72.
I think that's a completed project. Oh,
No,
All right.
Casey, you could give GLC a brief overview of the dental issue that will be part of your plan. So
Yes.
they can kind of direct which way they want to go possibly with it.
Yeah, so one of the, and we have to circle back around, because we met, I think it was right before Thanksgiving break. And there is an issue in your dental lab that wasn't on any of this, right? It's the value of this plan is we can bolt stuff in, because things are gonna happen, right? This is more of an industrial site than it is a school site half the time, right? This is stuff that's running. You have a current under sink air system that runs all of your dental chairs. And that air system is failing, right? It's a vacuum system, in fact, right? Vacuum, you have air system down in the basement that runs up. This is a vacuum system, right?
Mr. Suction from your,
Yeah,
Yeah.
the chairs.
Yeah,
from your chair.
exactly.
What
From your
did
chair.
you call him when you were a kid?
That
Mr.
sys-
Sucky or something?
Yeah.
Stick it in your mouth?
That system arguably, I don't even know. Just gonna keep going around. Yes. So that system was not what we have figured out with your dental supply company, was probably never actually engineered correctly. It was probably a carryover system from when the dental lab literally had 2 chairs here.
Yeah.
You now run 6 chairs, I think,
Six, yeah.
right? It doesn't have enough suction to function properly at 6 chairs. And as you look at program development at Bucks County Community College is looking at doing it, you're gonna need suction for 6 chairs. So A, your pump has failed. B, if you replaced 1 for 1 or in kind, you wouldn't actually be able to perform what you need to in all 6. So they quite literally use like a shop vac type portable system to simulate it for the students. So by looking at replacing it under sink, not really preferable. We were looking as a team, looking at putting it into an adjacent, what is right now really a lab room that's not heavily used, but doing it properly so that it's vented outside properly, it's wired, and it's separated, and then we can actually plumb it up.
And this is something that they're using in their clinics too for people?
Correct.
So, yeah, I mean, I would assume there's some health standards to,
It's weird, right? What I will say is, as long as suction is working, believe it or not, the Board of Health doesn't
well,
really
because
care where
you're
it
sucking
goes.
out, you're not putting in.
Blowing it in,
Yeah.
right. That's-
Casey, mention
Did
the
OSHA
part
pick
about
up
the
on
decibels.
Yeah.
Lots of people, OSHA.
So one of
That's a
the,
great question.
one of the other pieces, and as we started analyzing, I think he said it was right about, I don't remember, 89, yeah, 85 or 89 decibels, which is getting very, very close to your OSHA limit for requirement of notification for sound protection, for hearing protection, right? So what we're gonna have to make sure if we put it in this room is that we work, luckily you just had this whole conversation, work with your OSHA consultant and say, okay, what do we need? And it's probably a sign that says, cannot work in this area for more than 30 minutes. It's to a point that if you were wearing an Apple Watch, the Apple Watch will probably warn you, right? So
Well,
if
I
that's
was gonna say,
happening, you wanna be on.
Is it possible, I don't know how much, like, mezzanine or above ceiling area you have in there? Sometimes you can put those things up above there and.
You have
And
very,
then put
very,
extra
very.
insulated baffles around them to cut down on the sound.
There is a room that, there's a room they were partially looking to use, so it will be walled off, which is good. But they
Yeah,
still
it's a
need to
walled off
use-
area, it's
but-
probably the best sense area, you don't have enough room up above.
Okay.
Plus then you have water flow issues, right, because, and that's the other thing, this is on the port, this is, if you remember the history of the annex building, this is on the very edge of the annex building where it used to be a raised floor, right? Used to be built for data processing and other flexible uses, so there used to be a 3-foot wire chase underneath. That got all filled with concrete, so we can't even, no longer, it would have been nice, because you could have ran all that piping right underneath and made this simple, now it's all actually poured. And it's not over the other part of the annex, which actually has a basement or a chase in the middle, bomb shelter really, in the center. So, to be determined, we're gonna have to work with mechanical engineering, you are definitely well over that prevailing wage mark, just because you're dealing with piping and everything else that has to play in. You're probably, I think the unit itself was only like, 20 grand, but when you add all of this
Other work.
labor of piping and wiring and everything else, it becomes a little more complicated, right? But the good news is, what we were asked by your administration to do is to engineer properly, so that if they did light up to a full clinic use or a partnership with Bucks County Community College where they actually have people coming in and training, that all 6 chairs are operable all at the same time. You're not robbing Peter to pay Paul, right?
Was that on the list for the OSHA requirement, like, did OSHA? pick
No,
up on it?
it wasn't really mentioned, no.
It wasn't?
No, I mean, they knew there was an issue, he could see, he looked at was it a compressor under there? He looked underneath where it is now, and there was no OSHA issues really, other than it doesn't function properly and only 2 of the 6 chairs won't work. So, they didn't really flag anything per se.
I guess that what I could add to that was the gentleman from Patterson said,
Yeah.
if we put, that the units aren't made to be under sinks, and if we tried to do that again, definitely would trigger OSHA, because it'd be too loud for the kids in the classroom.
Yeah.
So he said, that's why you can't kind of just
Yeah,
swap
only the
out
sound would
what
be
we
a
have.
bigger unit.
So what timing are you looking at? Timeframe?
Yeah, I mean, we have to circle back around, I think there was gonna be planning discussions more on the programmatic side, but, I would say, what's that, 2 years? I would hope is that we're looking at this for your summertime project,
Yeah.
right?
He's too loud, I couldn't hear that, what was that?
Are you saying 2 years?
He said
72 days is definitely not enough time on this one. I
72
would say
days.
our hope and projection is that you can do this during the summer. That might also allow you to apply for an equipment grant if they're dropped from PDE. So if PDE equipment grant is dropped, these are actual perfect uses for those kind of things.
I can donate you a 3 horsepower vacuum pump if you want, but I think it'll probably suck somebody's
Yeah.
face in.
Yeah.
I have one to work with.
I have a 10-horse rotary pump that I could spare.
Yeah, but we'd have to bring a tractor PTO in probably.
No, it's got a 10-horse
Electric?
single-phase motor on it.
I got a 3 that I'm just sitting on, I haven't used it in a while.
You know, before we go into any more donations, is there anything else Site Logic has to bring to the table?
I think we're good, sir.
Not to move this along, Jim,
But to move it along.
but to move it along.
Okay. Over there?
Thank you all. Happy New Year. Thanks for coming out. Get right back in the groove. We have a quick JOC meeting coming up on the 16th, which is
Yes.
just 2 weeks.